Welcome back to Made for More. I am your host, Holly J. Moore. I am a divorce lawyer who is passionate about helping you use the adversity in your life to grow and show up as the best version of yourself. Aaron, are you the best version of yourself today?
I try to be.
Good.
The people at the front, Jessica and Martine, they do an amazing job of running the office, keeping it smooth, all that good stuff. They ask me when I come in, what's your percentage today?
Oh.
Yeah, usually it's in the 90s. Sometimes I walk in, 72.
Oh, no. This is like percentage of good or
yes.
like percentage of
what,
operating energy?
Yeah, operating percentage, yes. Yeah, what's your battery life today?
Yes.
I'm
I
like
love
97,
that.
98 right now. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Not so bad. Not so
Okay.
bad. So we've got a guest on today.
Yes.
Calls herself the Focusologist.
Focusologist.
And it's all about kind of slowing down and, with the hustle, slowing down and catching life's moments, not just blowing past them. And I'm curious because I get the impression from you catch those life moments. Have you always been that way?
I think so. I mean, I really love like finding the joy in my day, in my life. And so, and so many things bring me joy. Like, when they're like, oh, find the little things to get excited about. I don't need any help with that. I am like excited about every little thing all the time.
But why? How did you get to be that way, or were you always that way?
I think I was always that way. I think as a kid, I got excited about everything.
My theory about that, my theory, and you've talked about it on the show before. You had your dad in here as well. You grew up in a small town in Northern California.
Yes.
And my theory here is that you grew up with that kind of slow, chill life. You didn't grow up in the hustle, so you brought that to the hustle.
Oh.
That's my guess.
That could be true. It's definitely slower living up there.
It's my theory, though, so it's wrong.
I don't know. It could be right. We are joined today by Penny Zenker, author of the Reset Mindset book, and she calls herself a Focusologist. Penny, welcome to the show.
Holly, thanks for having me here.
Yes. Now, let's just get this out of the way. What on earth is a Focusologist?
Well, a Focusologist, any ologist, right, is someone who practices the study of something.
Yes.
So my definition, because when you make up a word, you should also make up the definition.
Yes.
Is the controlling and directing of our thoughts, the energy of our thought, our feelings, and our actions to produce a positive, meaningful result.
Okay, love that. And what was the purpose or the reason, the pivotal moment in your life where you decided I'm going to devote my life to the study of focus?
Well, to me, focus has a little bit of a different definition. A lot of people think of it just as attention. And I think of it as so much more than attention. So if we look at it, that it's really about focusing on what matters most, like giving our attention and with intention and direction is the way that I see it. And so it's really like what matters in this particular situation. And part of the reason that I came up with the definition is around the pandemic time is when that came up. And I was just realizing how distracted and fragmented our attention is, our ability to stay focused on the things that matter, because we're so working on and giving our attention to things that are outside of our control. And then it's wasted energy. So I thought, well, we all need to relearn and recommit to focus, myself included. So I did it for my own health and well-being, and also for those that I wanted to serve. So it's really because we are addicted to distraction and we really need to relearn and recommit to focus.
Yes. Why do you think we are addicted to distraction?
Squirrel. I mean, come on. We just are. I mean, let's see. Let's look at the statistics. Is that we swipe, scroll, tap, and touch our phone 3,000 times a day.
Oh my gosh.
And most people, they go to bed with their phone and they wake up with their phone.
Yeah.
And, it's the first thing that they go for, before they go to bed or when they wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
Not their spouse, not to kiss
Right.
their spouse, but to see,
Right.
who texted me or what's going on, in the news, or
Yeah.
did I get any notifications? Like, it's just, it's so, we've conditioned ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I call it, it's like sugar. The more you have it, the more you want it, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we have to detox ourselves because it's not even intentional
Right.
and anymore, right? It's unconscious. I
Yes.
did a couple of little tests that really showed me how bad I had it. So
Oh.
I was taking my daughter to school, which is like 4 minutes away, and I wanted to see how many times I would have the urge to touch my phone.
Yeah.
And in that time, I had 10 urges to grab my phone,
Yeah.
because my thoughts went somewhere. Oh, I should look that up. Or I should,
Yes.
all these different things is what happens, is because it's immediately there to answer our questions, to
Yeah.
check
To
in with
check the
someone.
weather, check your calendar. I know.
Right? It's sick.
Yes, I
When did you
know.
know? Tell me when you knew that distraction was getting out of hand.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. But I mean, I've had the same experience and it's so frustrating because I'm like, I'm going to just put my phone away and I'm not going to touch it for an hour. But then it's like, well, shoot, I need to know the weather tomorrow because I'm trying to, pick out my outfit I'll do something productive. I'll pick out my outfit for tomorrow. I will, pack my kids' lunch, whatever. And it's like, well, no, I need my phone for that. I need my phone for that. I mean, it is sick.
So we
What
just
do
have to
we
wean
do
ourselves
about it?
off of it, and our
Okay.
phone is only one part of the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
I think the real problem is that we're so bad at setting boundaries, and
Mm.
over the last couple of decades, the boundaries are put on us now, right? We don't even have any transitions between going
Yeah.
from one meeting to the next or
Right.
anything. Like, so the boundaries are on us, so we just must get better at setting boundaries.
Yes. Oh my gosh. How do we do that? How do we get better at setting boundaries?
Well, so what I talk about in my book, and what I talk about in this idea of how do we own our focus, is I talk about this concept called reset moments.
Yes.
And those moments are just recognizing the signals that we're distracted, or that we're frustrated, or that we made a mistake, or we're headed in the wrong direction. The signals that are there all the time. We're exhausted, but we
Yeah.
just plow through, right? Oh, ignore it. Let's just plow through. And my shoulder
Right.
hurts, my stomach hurts. We just keep going.
Ah.
So that moment, that reset moment, is that purposeful pause that we can take to recognize and be aware. And then what happens is it intuitively triggers what I call a reset practice, when we truly take that as a purposeful pause to reflect, to rethink, to recharge,
Yeah.
and it'll send
So
us through 3 steps.
yes, that's what I was going to say is you talk about there's 3 steps to the reset practice. The step back, they get perspective, and realign. So tell us a little bit more about those steps.
Well, it's I wanted them to be super simple, right? And super
Mm-hmm.
sticky. So the reset moment, like, I found people are really, they're getting it. Like, they know they
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah.
And it's almost permission. Like, reset is like a word that just releases. And
Yeah.
if you think about it, it's magical. It's not just an action, it's a way of thinking. And that's where these 3 steps come in. And there's
Mm-hmm.
also a whole bunch of principles that come when we even just say the word, to ourselves, that we're going to reset. But those 3 steps are so simple. Step back. What does that mean? It means to step away from the emotion, to get some objectivity to the situation,
Yeah.
because we make rash decisions. We say crazy things when we're emotional, right? Not
Right.
you, but I do.
Well, never me.
No.
Yeah. Yes.
And then once we step back and we're sort of, we have that objectivity, it opens us up to new possibilities and new perspectives, so that we can ask ourselves new questions, or really step into someone else's shoes to see what's going on. It brings out the empathy, the creativity, and gives us space to rethink things.
Yeah. And then, okay, was that realign or that was get perspective?
So that was get perspective,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
realign is just, you know, do what the next best thing is to do, right? To take action, aligned action. So now you're connected to what it is that's important to you by stepping back, because it's not just stepping away from the motion, but also seeing what your objective is and really connecting to that.
Yeah.
Then you have that perspective, and then you can say, okay, what's my best next step to make this person feel heard, or to find a new way to make this happen with half the budget, or whatever
Right.
the constraint is.
Yes. Okay, so speaking of, like doing something, you said something in your book which I had a business coach that used to always tell me this. And it's that when we make everything urgent and important, nothing is. My coach used to say that, Holly, if everything is important, nothing is. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So how do we truly determine what are the true priorities? What is truly important? What do we truly need to be doing?
Well, I think one of the interesting things today is that we live in a day where everything is urgent.
Yes.
So we create these false urgencies.
Yeah.
So the first thing that we can do is look for false urgencies, is to ask ourselves, is this really urgent? Take that purposeful pause, that reset moment, and look at your list. Which of these things is really urgent and
Yeah.
has to be done today? And what about has to be done by me today? Maybe
Right.
it doesn't have to be done by me, and maybe I
Yeah.
can delegate that. We think that it does because we want our hands in everything so that we can keep control over things. But so that's the first thing I would say is eliminate those false urgencies.
Yes.
And
So
maybe just to
on,
give you a second thing before,
yeah,
real
sure.
quick, is the problem with competing priorities is we don't have priorities, because if they're competing and everything's urgent, then we haven't set a criteria that says this is more important than that, which is the whole definition of a priority, that this is more important than that.
Right.
So that's another area we're not so good at. We need to set a criteria so that we're clear on what our priorities are.
Right. So on with the false urgencies, because we lack boundaries, a lot I feel like in my own experience, a lot of that is put on me by other people. I mean, for example, I've got a client texting me right now. I can feel my phone buzzing because he's like, "When can we talk?" And in my mind, I'm like, "Well, nothing is going to happen for actually a couple months." But I'm also feeling like oh my gosh, as soon as I'm done filming, I got to make that call. But in reality, it's not urgent.
Right.
It feels urgent to him, and he's making me feel urgent about it. It's definitely not urgent. So how do we handle when it's kind of put on us by other people? And granted, I'm fully aware that like we are allowing it. I am allowing
Right.
it. But how do we respond?
So there's a couple of different ways, right? If you're allowing it, you can stop allowing it in different ways by, uh, you know, uh, maybe I don't know how you left the conversation with them, but you could make sure that each time you end a session, that you're very clear on what the next step and when that is. For instance, you can let them know when they would expect to hear from you next. And I also think that sometimes we think that it's urgent because they're connecting with us, and we think that they think it's urgent, but they might not. It's like a hot potato. Maybe it
Okay.
just came up in their head, and they're like, I don't want to forget this. Let me just text
Right.
them, and then it's out of my hands.
Oh.
Right? So they're just passing you the hot potato. Let it cool down.
Right. 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 Wow. Okay, that's a great point. Like we're actually projecting the urgency. We're projecting onto them that they think it's urgent, and then it's onto us, but it's actually not even urgent to anybody.
Yeah. So
Oh
let
my
me give you an
gosh.
example of something that happened to me when I really realized this. Is I had this sense of urgency as a consultant and as a coach, and I was doing some consulting work. And as happens, is the client decides that even though this is the scope of your work, they want to give you something outside the scope. And of course, you want to say yes.
Right.
So
Yeah.
And so I felt like, oh, geez, this is going to make me work through the night to get this for tomorrow morning, right? I
Yeah.
assumed it needed to be done right away.
Yeah.
And I started to ask a simple question to relieve my own stress and say, when do you need this by?
Mm.
And what I found is that more than 50% of the time, it was not urgent. They just wanted to get it off their plate. They didn't
Right.
sometimes even have a date of when it needed to be. Somebody once
Yeah.
said, "Oh, I'm going on vacation next week, so, you don't need to have that till the end of the month." And I was like, "Oh, I
Right.
just saved myself all this
Yes.
stress."
Right.
So, just asking clarifying questions can also break that down so that we're not working from an assumption.
Yes. Oh, yes. Assumptions. They'll get you every time. um, okay. So I want to talk about how in your book, because what's interesting, when I was reading your book, are you familiar with Stoicism?
Yes, I wasn't as familiar, but yes, it's um, very stoic in that
Yeah,
context.
there's
It's
a
very much
lot of,
aligned with
right.
stoicism.
There's a lot of principles in your book that align with Stoicism. And I only know about it because we had a Stoic on the show and, he taught us all about it. And so I was curious about that because, yeah, a lot of principles in your book do align with that. One of the principles that I think is so useful for us in our everyday life, and I know the Stoic that I know talks about this a lot, but you say there is no more powerful force within our control than the ability to assign meaning to something. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. I'm also a neurolinguistic uh, programming
Yes.
master trainer. And so, from that perspective, that's also about, what perspective we take. What's the story? You've probably heard the expression, what's the story we're telling ourselves?
Yes.
It's also mindfulness principles. All of these, run together, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, if you think about it, is that every moment of every day, in a way, we have this inner question that says, what does this mean? Everything that happens to us, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
somebody cuts you off in traffic, your child doesn't clean their room or take out the trash as they're supposed to, or your spouse gives you a kind of a mean look, whatever it is. Was it a mean look? Did
Right.
I, or was it just he was tired and, and
Yeah.
his eye went like that? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we make up these things depending on the state of mind that we're in. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I'm having a bad day and someone cuts me off, I might, they're a crazy, terrible driver. Or it could be that something just happened in their life and they're a little bit, discombobulated, or
Right.
so many different things that
Yeah.
go into our meaning making. And if we just ask ourselves, what else could this mean? Like, this was
Yes.
something, a story that I shared in the book, is that it just helps us get perspective. Well,
Right.
maybe it doesn't mean that. Maybe it doesn't mean he's mad at me. Maybe it just means he's grumpy or he's having a bad day. Maybe I should go rub his back or
Yeah.
make him lunch. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's what we decide it means to us.
Right. Yes. And you mentioned the neurolinguistic programming, which reminded me, I wanted to ask you about neuroplasticity because I think that's so, I mean, I know the two are not the same thing. It just reminded me of it. But I wanted you to talk about that because, well, you say in the book, the reset mindset is firmly built on the concept of neuroplasticity. And I just think that's really important for people to understand and cling to so that they know there's hope, like they don't always have to have the same stories in their head, that our brains are flexible. And so talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we've learned so much about the brain, right, in the last decade, that it's incredible. And we have seen, they say that neurons that wire together fire together.
Mm-hmm.
So they're clusters of beliefs, let's say, that are together. But of course, we can change those by interrupting the pattern of thinking. So, like,
Yeah.
if we think something, we have an assumption that we're always making. I'm always wrong. I'm always wrong. You know, if we find something that can break that pattern, then we'll stop thinking about it. Because it's like cutting the neurons. If you think of it like a CD, for any of those who still know what a CD is, you know, it's going to play the same way each and every time, and that's the way that our brains work when neurons fire. But when you scratch that CD over and over again, or you do something that interrupts it, then after a couple of times, a couple of interruptions, a couple of scratches, it's not going to play anymore the same way. And so if we have a habit or a behavior that we want to change, we are not going to have to live with that for the rest of our life. It's not who we are or the way that we are. We just decide and understand how to break that old habit or behavior and then replace it with the new one. And so the reset mindset is about conditioning ourselves to take those reset moments, give ourselves permission to pause, to think, to breathe, so that we can make better decisions, so that we can show up at our best, even in the most difficult times. And in a way, that reset moment, recognizing it, is breaking whatever pattern you would have had, because you want to say something that maybe is aggressive and angry, but you stop yourself.
Right.
And you take that step back. It's almost like we teach our kids, you know, count to 3 before you say something when you're angry or something like that. We just forget as adults.
It's very true. I as you're saying,
binkies.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, we have versions of that. It's called tequila.
That's true. That's true. It does help. It does help.
But when you were talking about that, I was remembering when I was in my 20s. I had just gotten married, and I am still married to a fireman, and he was gone a lot. And it was really kind of my first time like living in a house, what felt like alone. And every night I was so scared. I would get like cold sweats laying in bed thinking there was somebody breaking into the house, or, you know, somebody coming to rape and murder me or whatever. And I had a friend from college that was a neuroscientist, and she said, Halls, the more you get scared, the more those pathways in your brain are like the grooves are getting deeper. You just have to like stop thinking those thoughts. You got to kick those thoughts out of your brain, you know, when you're having them. And so I started like every time I had a scary thought come in, I'd be laying there in bed and I would just like picture literally kicking it out. And pretty soon I never got scared anymore, and I really haven't since. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And it's funny. I used to have those kind of night terrors too. So yeah, it's the more that you think about something in a certain way, the like you say, it's like building a muscle that it's going to get bigger and it's going to be stronger, those pathways. And if you can kick it out, say, you know, there's a lot of different things. You can just clap, right? You hear it and you clap. That noise, that sudden will break the pattern.
Yeah. Okay.
Like you can do that to someone else too. Someone's constantly starting to cry when they talk about an old boyfriend. You know, just, I mean, it's annoying and they don't know what you're doing, but you know, it actually can break their, because it shakes them out. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. You know, or you go,
I have a dick.
You know, and they think that you're choking to death, but it works.
Gosh.
It breaks the pattern, because they're like, oh, are you okay? I mean, think about it. If we can be so upset and the phone rings,
hello.
We can do that, and that's breaking the pattern, right? So
interesting.
But then we can also potentially go right back to it, but sometimes we can't.
Yeah. So, okay, this is interesting, because I've invested a lot into my mindset in terms of coaching and reading and all that kind of stuff. And what I've noticed about myself after doing a fair amount of personal development and personal growth is like my kids and their self-talk is very triggering to me, because sometimes it's very negative. And I'm always like, you know, they're like, I'm so stupid, I'm going to fail this test, this, that, and the other. And it's like, it's so triggering to me, because I'm like, words matter. Please stop saying that. I'm like, don't talk about my friend that way. But I think now I'm just going to clap in their face with
you
that.
Could. You know, that that's so funny. So funny you use that example. That's the second example that totally I can relate to, because my son had a self-talk issue. And he
Okay.
would say, I'm so stupid. I
Yeah.
can't do this. He absolutely hated homework.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, he's going to grow up same as you, right? I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
he's doomed to be like a
Right?
negative. He's going to attract all this
Yes.
negative energy. Like, what the heck?
Yes. Yes.
And so, yes, you could break the pattern. That's one thing
Okay.
you could do. The second thing you could do is you could reframe the language. So when he
Okay.
said, I hate homework, I'd say, oh, homework's not your favorite.
Mm.
So I
Okay.
would simply reframe it so he heard it in a less intense way, because
Right.
sometimes it's just about lessening the intensity that
Yeah.
somebody's giving you.
Okay.
And
Hmm.
then, you can also, what someone said to me that was really powerful is they're like, this isn't the rest of his life.
Hmm.
Like, this isn't going to ruin his life. So stop like projecting it down through the
Right.
end, till
Yeah.
he's 20 and 30. Like,
Yes.
he's actually 20 now, and he's totally great and doesn't have that
Oh.
anymore. So
Okay.
it's a phase, right? So
Yes.
I think it's important also to realize and think of it like that, reframe it for yourself, is it's
Yeah.
just a phase, and you can help them with the intensity. You can help them by breaking the pattern,
Right.
maybe giving them some strategies to do things, that make it easier. Or we also did,
Yeah.
every time he said something negative about himself, another coach gave me this one. They said, high five. That means you have to give me 5 good things about yourself. For every negative
Oh.
time, every time you put yourself down, you have to say
Okay.
5 positive things.
Oh. Okay.
And we did that for a little bit. A lot of these depend on the age.
Yeah.
My son
Yeah.
would get to a certain age and he'd say, don't do that with me anymore.
He's too
And then
cool
you,
for that. Yeah.
okay, I
Yeah.
got you. We'll try something else.
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay, so in your book you say and actually let me just clarify. Could all of these things that we've been talking about be considered reset practices?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's, people are like, well, that's ridiculous. You're just saying everything's a reset practice. And I'm saying that when you do something intentionally that's going to give you a better perspective, get you a better outcome, right? Shift behavior or something like that, then it is a reset practice.
Okay. That makes sense to me.
So,
Um
because intuitively, right, if you think about it, all of those things are stepping your child away from, or the lessening the intensity, giving
yeah.
them some other ways to look at it, and then hopefully having them take a better action going forward, right? So,
Yeah.
these would all be reset practices. And the more you do it, the more you condition that reset mindset.
Okay. And then I think, one of the reasons why I mentioned stoicism earlier is because a lot of that is about sort of managing your emotions and having being able to control your emotions instead of them controlling you.
Mm-hmm.
And you write, reset practices help us detach from taking situations personally, unpack what we are feeling, and make better decisions in the midst of emotionally charged moments. So, I mean, would you say like these reset practices, essentially they're helping us manage our emotions?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of
Yeah.
the things that it do. It can also spark creativity. So that's why I find that it's magical. Reset, one single word, it's magical. It's
Yeah.
multiple different types of actions, right? Whether it's managing your emotions or sparking creativity or having more empathy and understanding for someone. It can, and sharpen your focus, right? It has
Yes.
multi purposes depending on how you put it to practice. And when you use it in a structured way, an intentionally, structured way, then you're going to get more out of it. And that's what makes it a true reset.
Right. Okay. So you talk in the book about task management versus performance management. And when we're talking about, like being focused on something, deciding what's important, what's truly a priority, I think it's easy for us to get sort of bogged down in tasks, right? Would you agree with that?
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so explain to us, I guess let's start with explain to us the difference between task management and performance management.
Well, maybe a good example is one of the areas that I learned this for the most part was I was working at a market research company in the executive team. And the CEO had been with the company for many, many years. He kind of started in the mailroom, one of those stories where then he was CEO of the organization. It was so bound into the organization with his heart and his soul. And one year, the first year in like 15 years, the company lost money. And he brought the executive team in and he's like, how did this happen? We failed. And he said that basically we're managing work and not performance, not impact.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, like you have a job description and it has all these different tasks or things that you should do as part of your job. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't state what the impact of those things should be. Mm-hmm. And if your end of the year measurement is on checking those boxes that you did those things, but at the end of the day, the company didn't make money, which means that your impact was not where it needed to be. Oh, and everybody was also getting above average reviews. That's impossible, right? We'd have to be super profitable. So, so the thing is that we're so busy checking boxes and caught up in the doing that we forget what we're doing it for. Yeah. And so with that comes a lot of wasted time on minutia and unimportant things or like perfecting things that don't matter.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes. My famous saying, I own a law firm, a family law firm in Southern California. And so, I kind of split my time between like CEO of the law firm and actually being a lawyer here. But in my role as a CEO, I mean, my like go-to saying is like, is that going to move the needle? Because I'm not going to do it if it's not moving the needle. And but do you think part of hustle culture nowadays and, this glorification of being so busy, do you think that is causing us to sort of like, take so much pride in having the biggest to-do list and marking everything off regardless of impact?
Maybe, maybe it's become, we do have this, I'm so busy, I'm busier, great. But I think the younger generation, right? That's not them. Like,
true.
They don't think you're smart if you're
super
busy and you're hustling, right? If you're able to travel 50% of your time and work the other 50%, then you're smart. So
that's true.
I think they've seen the burnout and they don't want that. And so I don't think it matters what led us here as much as, because I think that we just had a different work ethic and and things have changed. There was a lot of pressure to work overtime and and we just did it because we were loyal and it was just a different time. Right. But I think we're seeing that it's all of that the more that it's one of those things where the more we hustle and the busier we are, the less it makes us tactical, and the more tactical we are, the less strategic we think. Right. Because we don't take that time that's necessary to think through what we're doing. Is this the best way? Just because we've always done it this way, maybe there's a better way now. Maybe we could save time. Maybe we could save money, but people just carry on doing, and then jump into the next doing. And that's why these reset moments are so important. We live in a dynamic time. Things are changing so rapidly. Right. In the way that people's needs and desires, like we have to really step back and see, is the way that we're working, is it working? Especially if you're making mistakes or you're finding that you're not hitting your results. Those are all signals to say, slow down and rethink things.
Yeah. So for the people listening and watching, as soon as they turn off this podcast, what could they do to start? I know you mentioned in your book, like it takes practice, right? So it's not like we're all just going to go out and start having reset moments perfectly, but what could people do today to sort of start with this practice of having reset moments?
I think they can just become a professional noticer. Say that I'm just going to notice. Okay. Because in the beginning, when you start, you may recognize the reset moment after it happened. I could have taken a reset moment there, like maybe at the end of the day as you're in bed and you're feeling exhausted and you have a moment to think, you're thinking, I could have. So recognizing where you could have had a reset moment is already popping up and building some neural pathways, right?
Okay.
And then what happens is, if you notice it right after, what's going to start to happen is you're going to be thinking about it and looking for those signals. And then you're going to recognize it in the moment. Oh, geez, I'm exhausted. I need, I'm going to get up and take a quick walk. You're going to remember it in the moment.
Right.
Maybe you said something that was not nice to somebody in a not nice tone. You could say, geez, I'm sorry. I am so tired today. I didn't mean to say it that way. So you can correct it in the moment.
Okay.
Right? This is the whole idea of the dynamic reassessment piece of it. And then when you are now thinking about this and practicing this on a regular basis, you're going to recognize those reset moments before they even happen, because you're going to be checking in with yourself to make sure they don't happen, right? Before you say that, you see the bubble in your head that wants to say something bad, and then you take that bubble and you burst it, because you're like, that's not going to help right now.
Right.
So, because that happens to me all the time. It's not like, and it's not like I don't miss some. It's a practice, a daily practice, and some days are better than others. But I do pay attention and I listen. So if I hear myself using words or see that bubble come up that wants to say something to my kids, knowing that, you know what, they're not going to receive that well, so there's really no point in me saying that.
Yeah.
And it just makes us more strategic in how we think, how we act, and even how we feel.
That's great. I love that. Thank you for being on the show, Penny. And everybody go get this book, The Reset Mindset. I've got just a little bit more to say. So we're in early December, and my Instagram algorithm is mostly business stuff and some Bible verses. And on December 1st, I saw all these posts about it's the last month of the year. You've got 30 days to crush your goals. Hustle, hustle, hustle. Go get them. Crush it. Kill it. Beast mode. And you know what I said in my mind? I said, nope, not going to do it. I've been hustling for 11 months. I've been hustling my whole life, and I am going to just take a beat in December. It's the birth month of my Lord and Savior. I've got multiple birthdays in December. It's a beautiful month, a time of celebration, a time to celebrate the goals that I've achieved over the year. And I'm just going to take it a little bit slower. And now looking back, I see that that was actually a reset moment in my mind and something that I put into practice. And I would encourage you to stop glorifying busy, stop glorifying hustle 24/7, 365. It's okay to take a breath, to enjoy the things that bring you joy in life, and to reset, because you were made for more.